Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to Unparalleled Universe for another action figure discussion video. And today we're going to talk about 9 Mezco 112 collective figures that I feel are underrated. And I know that 9 is kind of a strange number. I could have went with 10, but that would have been forcing it. I was just looking at my collection and there happened to be 9 figures that jumped out at me that I felt really didn't get the love that they deserved. I know that sometimes Mezco figures come out in waves and there's just like avalanches of Mezco figures like at the end of last year. It was just crazy. So it's easy for some figures to kind of get lost in the shuffle. And I'm not trying to speak for anybody or anything like that. This list is just my opinion. Everybody has their own definition of what underrated means. For instance, I'm not really a big fan of the Mezco 112 collective Ascending Knight Batman, but I know a lot of people are. But you know, I think that's one of the least popular Batman figures from Mezco, and that's just my opinion. I feel like I don't see that figure too much, but you know, some people out there love it. So to those people, that figure's underrated. And same kind of thing goes for the Star Trek figures. I don't really like them, but I know a lot of people do. For those people, those figures are underrated. So it is what it is. This list is just based on my opinion of what underrated means, and it's just 9 figures that I feel don't really get the love that they deserve from the Mezco action figure community. First off, I just want to say that this list is in no particular order. It's just 9 random figures. So let's get into it. So I'd say for the most part, people love the Mezco 112 collective Batman figures, and you could tell by the prices on the secondary market. They're crazy high for almost every single one of them, except for the Ascending Knight Batman, because that one's still kind of new. Maybe it'll jump up, but for the most part, I'd say that all the Batman figures kind of skyrocket in price, and you know, they're just really good figures, so I could see why people love them. Same thing goes for the Punisher figures. I think that most Mezco 112 collective fans love the Punisher figures. Even if you're not a big fan of the character, it's kind of hard to deny how awesome these figures are. I think they're the best representation of Frank Castle, and they're just a lot of fun. And same thing could be said for the Deathstroke figures and the Popeye figures. These guys seem to be very, very popular. And if you go on Instagram or follow any type of action figure photography pages or articulated comic book art on Facebook or anything like that, you'll see constant pictures of these two figures, and I think that's a big indication of the popularity, and they're just both awesome figures. I really don't feel like any of these figures mentioned are underrated at all. These are ones that I feel are pretty much universally loved. There's probably exceptions. I'm sure people are going to comment about how much they hate a figure that I'm saying everybody loves. It is what it is. I'm just trying to give like an overview. These aren't the type of figures I'm talking about. These figures I'd say most people really enjoy. So let's get into this. First on the list is Black Adam, and this figure is very simple. There's not too much going on with it, so I could definitely see how it gets overlooked. He doesn't have very many accessories or anything like that, but he's a really nice looking figure. I think it's a perfect representation of Black Adam, and I like the fact that the suit is just cloth. There's no weird rubber lines or pleather overlays or anything like that. It's just very straightforward, very clean and nice looking, and I mess with it all the time. There's been no problems as far as like being damaged or anything like that. It's a very fun figure to mess around with. He looks great next to Shazam, and he's just a really cool figure, and I feel that he kind of gets ignored sometimes, so wanted to show him some love on here. Next up, we have the Comic-Con exclusive X-Men Deadpool, and this is based on a very specific look for the character, but it does look cool, and I can't remember which comic book this exactly came from. I think it came from like some alternate universe kind of deal. I know there's been several times where he's tried to join the X-Men. I don't think this is the type of uniform that he used for it, but this still captures that whole feel. It has the blue and yellow and things like that, so that's cool. It definitely feels X-Men to me, and I like this figure a lot because it's a lot different than the other versions of Deadpool that we have. The standard version and the X-Force version are very similar to each other, but this one is very different from both of them. And I will say that I think that he doesn't get as much love as he should, because he kind of, I mean, a lot of people don't like Mezco figures because they feel that it looks like pajamas, and I'd say that this Deadpool is probably one of the bigger offenders of that, but still, I like this figure a lot. A lot of people say that it looks just like Kick-Ass, which it's very hard to argue with that because it does kind of have a similar design. If it was a little more green, it would pretty much be Kick-Ass, but as is for Deadpool, I like this figure a lot. I think it's very fun. It's a lot funner to mess with than some of the other Deadpool figures because it doesn't have that pleather on the underarms, and it doesn't get hindered. The articulation isn't hindered by that stuff. So he's a lot easier to pose and mess around with. I do wish that he came with an unmasked head, but he did not. But still, he's a very cool figure. He has a bunch of weapons, and this was the first time that we saw a Mezco Deadpool figure, so it was very exciting to get this guy at Comic-Con. And I want to say that back when this figure came out, Mezco wasn't as popular as it is now. I was able to just walk up and get this, if memory serves me correctly. I don't remember standing in line for several hours like I did last year, so yeah, I don't know. But anyways, this is a really cool figure. And next up, we have Flash, and this is another really great figure. I like the way that the costume is very clean looking. It's very simple, but he does come with some accessories and things like that to make it look more interesting. You have these Speed Force effects that look really great, but just like Deadpool, this is another figure where a lot of people say that it looks like he's wearing pajamas, but that doesn't matter to me at all. I think that it looks great, and this figure was especially cool because it came with two different heads. It came with the head for Barry Allen, and then there's a head so that you could have the Wally West look. I think that's awesome. It's two characters in one, so that's very cool. Everybody has their favorite Flash, so this figure gives you the option of having either one, because I know if they only included a Barry Allen head, everybody would have been screaming for a Wally West head, so I like the fact that it has both. But yeah, this figure is just very clean looking, and all the joints are really tight, and I've had this figure for a couple years now too, and I've never had any problems where I feel like anything's gonna break or anything like that. One big complaint I do have with it is these Speed Force effects won't stay on him. They're very loose, but they do look very cool, and yeah, he looks awesome just standing there on the shelf with the other DC figures. Next up, we have the Comic-Con exclusive Classic Captain America, and this alongside the Armored Batman from BVS are a couple of the first figures that Mezco released after Dark Knight Returns and Judge Dredd, and maybe Spock. I think the Spock figure might have come out before this one, but it was early in the line, and as soon as I got the Dark Knight Returns Batman figure, the first thing that jumped to my mind was wanting a Captain America in that same style. I'm a big Captain America fan, so when this was announced, I was very excited about it, and even though there are things on here that aren't perfect, and he doesn't perfectly capture the look from the classic Captain America, I think it has a lot of the elements, so I'm very happy with it. But the one thing that I don't like that much is the head sculpt, but he did come with two different heads. He came with this and an unmasked head, and then a bunch of hands and all kinds of cool stuff, and he came in a really awesome metal tin, which, you know, I know the packaging doesn't really matter, but it was a cool presentation when I opened this figure up, and I was very excited about it. And yeah, this thing is very cool. I wish they would try again with the classic Captain America and maybe go without the scales. I've seen people remove, not scales, but the chainmail effect. I've seen people remove the chainmail effect, and it looks pretty cool. I would like to see them re-release it like that. That'd be great. I doubt that they'll revisit Captain America, but they've given us a couple good ones, including this one. I like this one a lot, and he looks really cool next to Iron Man and, you know, other comic book based figures. So I think this guy's awesome, and a lot of people kind of hate on it, so I'm not sure why. He's a great figure. And next up, I have Green Arrow, and this figure is a really cool looking figure. It's very unique. It's an interesting take on Oliver Queen. It has a Robin Hood type of feel to it, which is, you know, in line with a lot of interpretations of the character, so that's very cool. It's one of the best uses of leather type of material on a Mezco figure. This vest thing actually feels leather, so it's very nice, and then it has like a wire in the hood. A lot of good stuff going on here. There were a couple big flaws. The main flaw is the ankles. I guess I'd say that's almost the only flaw, because the ankles are not very good. They've definitely improved on the ankles since this figure came out, but I feel like this figure was just forgotten, but I really don't understand why. It's a really nice figure. There's a lot of cool things going on. I do wish that it had actual straps. I know some people disagree with me on that, but I do wish that there was actual straps instead of just these plastic things going on, and that's what I thought was going to be on the figure before it came out, so that was one thing that I remember being a little bit disappointed in. But for the most part, this is a really nice looking figure, and it came out at the right time. It was around the time that the Arrow show was very, very popular, so it got out there when it needed to. And yeah, this is just a really cool looking figure. I had a lot of fun taking pictures with this guy, so I'd love to see people take more pictures of Green Arrow. I'm not sure how much he is on the secondary market. I imagine he's jumped up a lot because a lot of the older Mezco figures have, but if you're able to get your hands on this, I suggest you do it. But be very careful, because I do think that there was a knockoff floating around, and you don't want to get that and then think that this is a horrible figure, because it's not. This is a really nice, high quality figure. And next on the list is the previews exclusive symbiote Spider-Man, and this is probably the newest figure on the list here. But yeah, this thing, people just kind of hated on it when it first came out. I remember being blown away because some people out there saw this when it first came out and were just like, nope, like it looked like garbage or something, and I just didn't understand. There was a lot of like goofy complaints on it, like a lot of people were mad about the stitching, but you need stitching on a figure like this. It is what it is, and it's not like it's in crazy obvious spots. It's pretty well hidden. But yeah, yeah, for the most part, this figure is awesome. He's probably the most articulated Mezco figure that we've seen. He's got a lot of good articulation. He does not have the shoulder swivel, but everything else works really good. His ankles are really nice. They've improved a lot over the years, and this figure is proof of that. But yeah, this figure is just, I love this figure, to be honest with you. It was one of my favorites last year on my top 10 Mezco figures of 2018. And yeah, this thing is just really cool. It's my favorite Spider-Man figure from Mezco. It captured the look of the symbiote suit perfectly. It looks very clean. I mess with this figure a lot and haven't had any problem with it, but I know some people have. I know some people had like stuck ankle joints, which really sucks because the ankle joints on this guy are really nice. And I remember when this figure first came out, a lot of people were showing pictures of just broken ankle joints or torn costumes or whatever, but that just hasn't been the case with mine. But I have been very careful how I leave them. I'm not going to leave them on my shelf crunched over like this or anything like that, because I'm sure that when I go to take it apart, this material will stick together or something and the figure would just rip. I'm not saying that's guaranteed to happen, but that's one fear I have when I pose this figure. So when I pose him, I just kind of, when I have him on my shelf, I just kind of leave him standing up. But for the most part, this figure is a lot of fun to mess around and play with, and it's my favorite look for Spider-Man other than the classic version. So yeah, this figure is really awesome, and I just don't understand the hate that it gets. So I hate to break up the rhythm here. I know I was going DC Marvel, DC Marvel, DC Marvel, but I'm down to only one more DC character and two more Marvel characters. So anyways, next up I have the Commander Rogers figure, and this figure is crazy underrated for some reason. A lot of people don't like the head sculpt. I don't understand why. I think it's fine. It doesn't look bad to me at all. It's a white dude with blonde hair and blue eyes, so that fits Steve Rogers perfectly in my opinion. And I'm just a big fan of this costume for Steve Rogers. This is around the time that he came back from the dead and Bucky Cap was still Captain America, and Steve wanted to let him do his thing for a little bit longer, and I just like that era in comics in general. There was a lot of good stuff going on there, and yeah, this figure just captures that look perfectly. There's not too many toys of this look. I know that Marvel Legends put out one during the return of Marvel Legends by Hasbro, and that figure just sucked. It used a old Toy Biz body. I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but this figure here, I like it a lot. I do wish that it came with another head sculpt, and I think that would have added to the overall value of this figure, because we could have used that head sculpt on the other Captain America figures. I think it would have been cool to have like another unmasked Steve Rogers head with maybe like a different expression or something. But yeah, as is, I like this figure a lot. And what's really crazy about it is this figure got really inexpensive for some reason. One time I went to a toy convention and with my nephew was able to buy this figure for like 40 bucks or something. It was like a steal. So that's rare for Mezco. A lot of the Mezco figures do not get that low. So I was really surprised that this figure got that low, because it's a really nice looking figure. I'm not sure what it costs now, but I know for a while there it was even really cheap on Amazon. But anyways, that one's bizarre to me, because I think this is a really nice take on the character. So next up I have the classic Superman, and I realize that there's a lot of things wrong with this figure. They really took a strange approach with this guy. I think this is a case where Mezco tried to do their own thing and it just kind of went wrong for the most part, but I still enjoy this figure a lot. I have him hanging out with my other DC characters. I kind of have him like hanging over them, like I have him on a piece of string or whatever, and I think that he looks really cool like that, and it kind of just makes me appreciate this figure because he looks awesome next to those comic book characters. I'll admit that they should have just gone with the plain blue cloth suit instead of this weird shiny stuff, and then cloth shorts on the outside of that. But for some reason they decided to do this, and I still think it looks nice. I'm gonna, I'll stick next to that. I think that it looks really cool, but it's just not the ideal look for Superman. But they did do some cool things here. I think the head sculpt is perfect, and I like that they put a magnet into the logo here so that you could attach the bullet ricochet effects. I think that's very cool and unique. I like the cape on him. I think the cape looks good. For the most part, I think everything about him looks good. It's just not the perfect look for Superman. And this is one I really hope that they revisit, because they could do a good classic Superman if they wanted to, and I'm not sure why they went away from having the shorts on the outside. They did it on the Dark Knight Returns and it worked out fine, and they should have done it with Superman and like with Wolverine and a couple other figures out there. But yeah, I think Superman's definitely one that they should revisit. But for the most part, I do like this figure a lot, and he's kind of skyrocketed in price even though people hated on him, so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, he's kind of tough to get your hands on this guy now. If you get the opportunity, I say it's worth it. I think it's a good figure. So even though this list is in no particular order, I would say that this last one to me is probably one of the most underrated Mezco figures, and I really don't understand why, because it's a unique look on a classic character. It's a figure that's a lot of fun, and that would be the PX exclusive classic first appearance yellow Daredevil. And I just love this thing. It's probably my favorite Mezco Daredevil figure. I know that's saying a lot because the standard version and the Shadowland version are both incredible figures, but this thing is just so unique and crazy looking. And even though Mezco likes to take a lot of liberties when it comes to making their figures, I feel like this is pretty comic book accurate. There's a lot of different versions of yellow Daredevil, so I think that this is a good representation of at least one of them out there. I'm going to do some digging around and see how accurate it really is, but I feel like it captures the look perfectly, and it's just a really fun figure. And this is another one that for some reason the price just kind of dropped down really low. You were able to get this for very cheap. People were buying it up for customs or whatever. But yeah, I'm not sure what the availability is these days, but I hope that if you were interested in this figure, you were able to pick it up when it was very inexpensive, because it's worth it. I've always been super happy with this figure. It's such a crazy look, you know. I've always liked the idea of Daredevil in yellow. It's just insane, you know. But and I'll be honest with you, it's ugly, but that's the thing that I like about it. It's ugly and unique, and it's just very, very cool. And this figure is probably one of my favorite Mezco figures, to be honest with you. It's just so crazy looking, and I love it. So, okay, guys, so there it is. 9 Mezco 112 collective figures that I feel are very underrated. And this video just came from me kind of staring at my collection, just appreciating my figures and thinking about how I don't see too many pictures of any of these figures out there. There are exceptions. I've seen some great pictures of Superman. I've seen some awesome things with Green Arrow and Black Suit Spider-Man, but it's just nothing compared to the amount of pictures that we see of Punisher and Deathstroke, Popeye, Batman, Wolverine, all those different figures. We see those figures all the time, and those ones are also all amazing. But I'm just saying, these are 9 figures that I feel don't get that much love in the action figure community or in the action figure photography community. I follow a bunch of different Instagram sites and websites and all kinds of things like that, and I feel like I just don't see these 9 figures as much as we should. And I'm guilty too. I should take more pictures of these guys, you know. But anyways, I know everyone out there is going to have different opinions. Some people are going to be like, yeah, that figure sucks, that's why it's underrated. But for whatever reason, these figures speak to me, and it's not going to be the same for everybody. So be sure to let me know in the comments what figures you feel are underrated. What are some figures that you love that you feel don't get appreciated out there in the action figure community? Really, it's not like it matters. This is just a fun list to put together, and you know, if you like a figure, that's all that matters. You should enjoy it the way that you should. It really doesn't matter how many pictures you see online about it. It's just a fun topic of discussion. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And that's it. Peace.